Working again with Kenny Hyman, Michael Carreras found an interesting mix of fantasy and flesh.
I was called on the telephone by Dick Zanuck, who was head of the studio then, and he said, "We've got this fabulous project for you, Raquel. It's called 1 Million Years BC, and it's a remake of a Victor Mature, Carol Landis movie." And I said, "Oh my God, not a dinosaur movie? Man, I'll never live this one down." I figured, well, Steve McQueen got away with The Blob. You know, maybe I can get away with 1 Million Years BC. You know, nobody will remember this thing. I can shove it under the carpet, you know. But people remembered it. For the kind of films that Hammer makes, I thought that they always do a very good job. They have a certain budget, and they have a certain look they're trying to achieve. It's not Gone with the Wind. It's not a David Lean movie, relatively speaking. I thought it was a pretty well-done movie, and they told me Ray Harryhausen, who was a kind of genius of sorts to do all of the special effects and this frame-by-frame photography, and it was all explained to me, you know, in great detail.
So I took on the project with the Hammer Company in London. It was a pleasure to get back to dinosaurs again. They were my first love.
The man was a genius. But the frightening thing, of course, is that when you're looking at the rushes, after a full day's work, you go into the theatre the next day, you've got 6 frames. You know, I mean, it's better to hold them up to the light, because otherwise they've gone through so quickly.
Carl Toms really made the most of this little doe-skin number that I was supposed to wear. So this costume got smaller and smaller as the production went on. I felt a little self-conscious with this very brief thing on all the time. Alternately, I would try to sort of strut my stuff to make the most of it, because I figured, obviously, this is why they've cast me in this movie, not for my acting ability, because I have no lines.
I think if cave women in the early days looked like Raquel Welch, why, we've regressed considerably today.
But when you were doing it, it just seemed so ridiculously silly, you know, and you kept thinking, you felt like a fool, quite frankly.
Jamaican-born Martine Beswick writhed her way through her portrayal of the naughty Neanderthal.
Raquel had this lovely, everything was like perfect, and mine looked like a rag, you know, so I was a bit jealous. She had more makeup and she had eyelashes, and I had to go like a pig woman. And then you have this big girl fight. The Queen of the Shell people and the Queen of the Rock people had to have a girl fight. And we had to do destry rides again in the caves of Tenerife. Martine and I worked out this whole routine together. It took a couple of days to shoot, I think, as I recall. I just loved to do the action stuff. I should have been a boy.
We often wonder whether the attraction of Miss Welch or the dinosaurs were the important thing in the picture.
You know, it started me off. So I guess Dick Zanuck was right, you know.
We had some sets standing from Million Years BC, and the idea came on to make a quickie.
And he said, "Martine, I've got something." He said, "I want you to be my queen." I said, "Oh, all right, darling. Well, I want to do this film called
Slave Women of the White Rhino. I mean, what else can I say?
You've got to be kidding."
Why did you come?
I can only believe the fates brought me here.
And they brought you to me.
And all the little blondies had these, they just came right out of acting school. And everybody had these, like, really English voices like this, you know, and it was hysterical.
I am queen here. I will not be denied.
Bosco Holder, Jeffrey Holder's brother, and he did all the dancing. Well, I sort of was let loose after he choreographed it. I thought, listen, this is my vehicle. I get to have eyelashes in this one, and I get to have my costume fit. I'm going to make this work, no matter what it is.
We made a huge mistake on that film, because we really should have had those wonderful cartoon biff, bang, ouch. It should have been done like that.
Who are you?
Val Guest directed the third saga, created in Sir James' typical manner.
Do me a picture with dinosaurs and a dinosaur with a girl in his mouth. They did this enormous great poster with sex and bikinis and this great thing. And Jimmy said, fine. Okay, so he sent that to America and said, what about a picture? Here's the poster. And they set up the picture on the poster.
When dinosaurs ruled the earth.
The dinosaurs were created by American Jim Danforth on the usual sparse budget.
But he was a brilliant little guy because he used to work out all those monsters with little human traits to them, which I have never seen done before.
Sir James confirmed with Brian Lawrence, later to head the company with Roy Skeggs, and producer Aida Young.
Wonderful figure, very good face. Isn't it exciting to find somebody new and launch them each time, like these girls?
Somebody that looks like this,
Yes.
I agree.
She looks great.
She has to have a special kind of magnetism. I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it. And Victoria Vetri has it, I'm sure.
That was a fait accompli, yes. That came over. She had been a centerfold in Playboy or something, and whoever was doing it, I don't know who the picture was done for over there. It was AIP or was it Warner's? Warner said, well, give us some glamour that we know.
Lightning didn't strike twice. The distributor didn't push the film widely, nor did audiences take Victoria Vetri to heart as they did Raquel Welch. Danforth and Les Bowie received an Oscar nomination for their effects, but lost to the Disney musical Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
When dinosaurs ruled the earth.
Cross-cutting on creatures the world forgot meant no dinosaurs, no dialogue, and no clothes whatsoever. Hammer was now imitating its own films, and fortunately, so were a lot of other people.
It's over? Yes, son. It's all over.
As early as 1958, Eros films mimicked the Quatermass style with the Trollenberg Terror. They also produced a Technicolor chiller with a script credited to Jimmy Frankenstein Sangster.
That's sickening, isn't it?
No longer could there be this indirection and not showing things and people, you know, describing things that had happened as opposed to seeing them. The pictures were very graphic.
Made in Hollywood by Herman Cohen within months of Curse of Frankenstein, this film referred to the doctor's ancestral home in England. Crates in his lab were even stenciled with the address 113 Wardour Street, London.
Well, that's because Herman Cohen's office was on Wardour Street, in the same building as the Hammer Films office.
Hammer's use of colour and period decor begat the Edgar Allan Poe films in Hollywood. Hazel Court became a familiar sight in these American international pictures.
Your hands are so cold.
Oh, I don't think there's really any difference. No, you just have better facilities here instead of a house, you know, that leaks.
We often found ourselves employed by competitors like the partnership of Rosenberg and Subotsky, who suggested Frankenstein to Hammer back in 1956.
During the 60s, there were a lot of imitators of Hammer. Amicus pictures looked virtually the same, had identical casts, and I think the studio started to lose its identity a little bit.
Hollywood began spending millions on films we'd done for nearly nothing. Great stars, elaborate effects. And on the low-budget end, violence we'd used as punctuation became the raison d'etre. Nothing succeeds like excess. The face of Hammer changed. Tired of making quality films on diminishing budgets, Tony Hines retired at 46, though he continued to write scripts. Sir James used all his sales ability to lure his son back to the fold.
Money. I mean, I needed the dosh. But I cleared my brain and came back and got on with the job.
Michael Carreras arranged a co-production with the Run Run Shaw studio in Hong Kong.
It seemed to me that if we were going to go back and make another Dracula type, that we really ought to try and find a new way of telling the tale. So the Shaws, who I've always admired anyhow in their attitude to filmmaking, it seemed to me a natural marriage.
The idea of going to Hong Kong to make a picture, of course, was wonderful if you've never been to Hong Kong. But the difficulties were absolutely enormous. Trying to put kung fu with straightforward horror didn't work, or at least we didn't have a script that made it work.
Christopher Lee declined this final indignity. Instead, the Count was played by John Forbes Robertson. At least I had the honor of driving one final wooden stake.
As the seven brothers and their one sister meet Dracula.
But I think it's something else that didn't work. I'm not saying that it necessarily makes for a better picture to have those ingredients, because you're fighting the believability factor all the time. The representatives of the major American companies, they should have said this is no good. But what they said instead was, if you can make it cheaper, or if you can show a little more of this, that, or the other, we'll do it. And I think they misled us in a way.
So I think that had a lot to do with the downfall of Hammer. They lowered their standards because they had their own venue, their own way of doing things, you know. And then suddenly, because everybody was doing nudity, because it was attracting more, well, it's happening again right now. It's happening. The same thing's happening now.
Knighted and respected, Sir James wished to retire and sell off the company. Michael wanted to keep it in family hands.
I think Jimmy was bought out, or rather, Mike got controlling interest.
I mean, our horror stories by that time were passé. I mean, they were children's stuff when you get into chainsaw massacres and what have you. I suppose I wasn't in tune. I have to take the blame for this. I was in charge.
Everything is born, it flowers, and then it fades away, and eventually it dies.
Hammer period was like the last gasp of world cinema.
And as it happened, the horror thing can't go on forever. Sadly, some of the other streams that I tried to instill into the company's product line just didn't work.
No, there was none of the old gang. We saw this disintegration happening. We were rather sad for it. Because the people who were concerned with Hammer, really, other than Mike, were no longer around.